Hello there guys, it's Joey. Welcome back to I Can't Witch Without, and this week we will be looking at Rosemary. So the preamble to the I Can't Witch Without series goes thus: none of the items that you see are indicative of things that you must use in order to be a witch. It's just things that I regularly use in my practice and wish to speak about. As usual, we will look from two particular sources, and then I will talk a little bit at length about my feelings about rosemary, my experiences with it, just kind of spiritually just sort of talk out loud about it. So first, before we get into the actual meat of the video, apologies for the lack of videos this week. I was going to catch up yesterday, but given what I consider to be the horrendous political situation which has occurred in this country as of yesterday, I was just so heartbroken that I couldn't function yesterday, so I put it off for a day, and I'm still a little bit shaky, or a lot shaky today because of the whole thing, so you'll have to bear with me if it takes me a minute longer to accumulate my thoughts than it might do otherwise. So in front of you is rosemary essential oil, and this is some rosemary from outside that I dried myself. Now I hope you can see, because I have actual rosemary sort of wood in there, rosemary needles if you like, and then there's actually some rosemary flowers in there. It's flowering at the minute, and it has its lovely blue flowers, and I brought a sort of stem of it in and dried it. I think I brought it in just before Beltane and yeah, and dehydrated it. So if you buy rosemary in the supermarket, you may or may not have ever seen the blue flowers on rosemary. But there you go. That's the visual. So as usual, the two sources in which we read from as points of reference, I'm a Virgo like that, is the Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs by Scott Cunningham and the Compendium of Herbal Magic by Paul Barrell. So these are a really good place to start, and that's why I provide them in the videos. I think it's a good to have reference points. So from Cunningham's Encyclopedia, rosemary, folk names including compassweed, dew of the sea, elf leaf, guard robe, incisor, libinontis, polar plant and sea dew, masculine, sun and fire, powers of protection, love, lust, mental powers, exorcism, purification, healing, sleep and youth. Magical uses. Rosemary, when burned, emits a powerful cleansing and purifying vibration, and so is smoldered to rid a place of negativity, especially prior to performing magic. It is one of the oldest incenses. When placed beneath the pillow, rosemary ensures good sleep and drives away nightmares. Laid under the bed, it protects the sleeper from all harm. Rosemary is also hung on the porch and doorposts to keep thieves from the house, and is carried to remain healthy. Presumably yourself rather than the rosemary. Placing it in a bathtub, it purifies. A chaplet of rosemary worn aids the memory, while the wood smelled often preserves youthfulness. To ensure the latter, add a rosemary infusion to the bath water. Rosemary has long been used in love and lust incenses and other mixtures, and healing poppets are often stuffed with rosemary to take advantage of its curative vibrations. Rosemary infusion is used to wash the hands before healing work, and the leaves mixed with juniper berries are burned in sick rooms to promote healing. If you wish to receive knowledge or the answer to a question, burn rosemary on charcoal and smell its smoke. Rosemary is also grown to attract elves, and powdered leaves wrapped in linen cloth and bound to the right arm dispel depression and make the emotions light and merry. Can be used as a substitute for frankincense. So then we've got the compendium of herbal magic. Sun, funeral herb, green herb, herb of protection, herb of purification, magical herb, religious herb, also called compass plant. And as usual, this book I much prefer. It has some of the history and the standing behind it, lore. The ancients were well acquainted with the shrub, which had a reputation for strengthening the memory. On this account it became the emblem of fidelity for lovers. This comes from Modern Herbal. Rosemary has a long history of use in all manner of religious rites, ranging from weddings to funerals, and has often been used for decoration at Yule, as we learn from a Modern Herbal. At weddings it was entwined with the wreath worn by the bride, first dipped into scented water. A rosemary branch, richly gilded and tied together with silken ribbons of all colours, was presented to the wedding guests as a symbol of love and loyalty. Together with an orange stuck with cloves, it was given as a New Year's gift. Allusions to this custom are to be found in Ben Jonson's plays. Usage. Even today, rosemary is used to increase one's ability to remember things. We find numerous quotations in literature which cite rosemary's ability to empower memory. When combined with its history of usage for important occasions, this herb is ideal when someone wants to mark a celebration deserving of remembrance. Not only will rosemary make the occasion more sacred, but it will keep the memories alive in everyone's mind. Oh, that's lovely. I like that combination of ideas. We recommend keeping alive the custom of giving small bunches of rosemary to the guests at a hand fasting or ritual of union. This evergreen perennial has been considered a symbol of wisdom and love, of loyalty, fidelity, and remembrance. Rosemary is such a useful herb that we make use of its magic in almost every imaginable way, from placing sprigs of rosemary in with flower arrangements, to wearing the essential oil as perfume, from bathing with it prior to ceremony, and using it when baking or cooking. We should always remember to use rosemary. A wonderful quotation comes from the Treasure of Botany in a Modern Herbal. There is a vulgar belief in Gloucestershire and other counties that rosemary will not grow well unless where the mistress is master, and so touchy are some of the lords of creation upon this point, we have more than once had reason to suspect them of privately injuring a growing rosemary in order to destroy this evidence of their want of authority. Interesting. Strength of female power linked to rosemary there. We can only recommend this herb as an important one for women who carry positions of responsibility, who are striving to control their own lives. Spanish Christians of an earlier time believed rosemary provided protection and courage for the Virgin Mary. In modern times, rosemary may be used to provide protection when interviewing for a job, perhaps helping the prospective employer remember you when making that important decision. Grieve writes that the rosemary was used in ancient times as incense, once used to purify places of illness and distress. Rosemary makes an excellent incense for all ritual work. Today we may make use of it to protect us against dark forces or to bring purification. Rosemary is one of the many herbs said to have been used by Solomon when asperging his temple. Rosemary may be used as incense at rituals of death and dying. It may be placed on the coffin when it is slowly lowered into the burial place. Thus all will remember with love and fondness the one who is passing into another life. And thus we also remember that we inhabit mortal bodies as we walk this earth. When Mrs. Grieve wrote her herbal, this custom was still practised in Wales. There is an interesting diva with this plant. In Sicily, it was believed that the fairy folk inhabited rosemary, and they were able to shape-shift and appear as small snakes. And then there's a slightly alternate sort of meanings and things for the essential oil. Spiritual meanings of rosemary essential oil are given as clarity, energy, and uplifting. The magical properties are given as healing, love, protection, and purification. Rosemary essential oil has a okay, hang on a second. Camphoraceous, herbaceous scent that helps the spirit to receive assistance of a spiritual journey. It helps us to remember who we are and what we are. It brings protection to the unwell. It is used to bring healing elements forward. It helps us to recognize that we have a conscious mind, a subconscious mind, and a superconscious mind, and that we are always spiritual beings. Rosemary is one of the oldest incenses. It is often burned to help get rid of negativity. Wear as a perfume to attract love. Rosemary essential oil is royal in stature. It stimulates your sensitivity like ambrosia, the liquid of the gods. It increases creativity by uplifting exhaustion, and it philosophically awakens your heart. Okay. So rosemary is one of those really difficult to tackle herbs when you're talking about it in terms of witchy practice, spiritual practice, and it's difficult to really talk about it because it has so many potential uses, and the uses can be as varied as the individual witch. Going over the meanings from the books, that becomes quickly apparent. For me, there's something of earth memory within rosemary. Its deeply aromatic scent is something which triggers memory, as has been sort of ascribed in the books, but it goes beyond that. Human beings seem to have always recognized the great purpose of rosemary. We use it in all sorts of things. We use it in incenses, we use it in bathing, we use it in our cosmetic products, we use it as a herb for supplements and health, we use it in cooking and baking and things of that nature. We use it for asperging, we use it for cleansing our spiritual spaces. For me, it kind of has like a spiritual imprint that goes back throughout the history of time, and I think it's really incredibly primal in its energies because it has such a long history of metaphysical and spiritual use. Often, as different generations tune into the energy of something, they're picking up on the energies of their ancestors, how their ancestors will have used the particular herb in question, but also they add their own feelings to it. So it becomes like this rich tapestry of metaphysical meaning attached to a particular herb or spice, in this case herb. It has something of life energy in it as well. It's attributed to energies of solar and fire energy, and I guess that kind of makes sense because solar and fire energy are what I conceive to be most closely associated with the life energies in terms of the cycles, life, death and rebirth. The sort of solar fire energy is what I would most associate with the sort of life aspect of the cycle, and rosemary is so tied to it, so many different aspects of our life, that it kind of starts to weave, and again it weaves this tapestry of magical use and becomes almost an essential herb to humanity, because people who have nothing to do with witchcraft or metaphysical knowledge are aware and have memories of rosemary. I was actually gently taking this sprig apart of rosemary, and it was speaking to me as I was doing it, and it was you know, everything with reverence is basically the message I was getting. No matter what you do, you have to do it with reverence, and it's something I believe very much in, which is the the sacred connection, the honouring of an energy as you are working with it, as you are integrating it into your life, as you are putting it to use, if you like. Everything with a sacred meaning, everything with reverence, sort of like this honour and passion of something, and bringing that into any particular part of your life is something that we as spiritual practitioners often seek, with varying levels of success. But rosemary is so integrated into so many different parts of our lives, as we've seen from the multitude of uses, as well as some of the mundane uses suggested, such as bathing and cooking and things, that it brings that element of the sacred into every part of our lives. It is very much about life, energy, for me. And then it goes beyond that. It moves into the realm of the spirit as well. There's an obvious connotation and an obvious connection given in the herbal compendium, where it's sort of associated with not only marriage but death. It's a herb of union, and quite frequently the coming together of certain things is reflected in specific herbs or flowers, and I think no herbal flower, when you really research into it, crosses over these different points of union as well and as often as rosemary. It crosses over the union from life to death in the elements that we have sort of looked at, you know, we've read them in the book. Placed upon the coffin when it is slowly lowered, and helping us to remember that which we have lost. It's a herb of mourning in that respect, to help us hold on to the feelings of love as we lose someone. And I think for me that goes back to the energy of this spiritual herb, which ties into sort of the earth memory, the life memory of human beings, and a spiritual journey which has been going on as a human race since the beginning. No matter which path we walk, certain things unite us, and I think rosemary is one of those unifying herbs. The scent's so aromatic, so deep and meaningful. It's been used in ritual spaces to asperge sacred ground. It can be used, placed around sacred ground to create a sacred grove, a sacred circle, if you like. The asperging of a space with rosemary is actually something I enjoy. You can do this one of two ways. You can actually have like a branch of rosemary and you have your sacred waters. Quite often it's salt and water for the purifying. The branch is then sort of moved through the water, and then sort of the water is sort of sprinkled and the space is cleansed. Or you can place sort of rosemary in the water and then just sort of flick the water by yourself, I guess. And it does have this deeply wonderful cleansing energy. I wonder if the combination of water and rosemary as a level of spiritual purification comes from the elements of how it's sort of the balance of fire and water in one sort of combined effort, as well being water being a conduit between our world and the next. Places of water, if you think about it, are often quite sacred. It's a fairly Celtic tradition to believe that rivers and such are the in-between spaces between the realm of man, earth, and the realm of spirit. So the combination of rosemary with water is something which I think is incredibly powerful and incredibly moving. rosemary really is one of those herbs as well that appeals to all of our senses, and sort of because it appeals to every element of our senses, it then takes on a spiritual energy all of its own. If you think about how we as witches quite frequently talk about the balancing of the elements, with spirit being at the top, you know, even in the pentagram, which is in the bowl. So you have, by standard meaning, spirit being at the top of the pentagram, and then the other elements making each of the 4 elements. So you think about how we've already talked about the uses of rosemary. You know, for earth you could be ingesting it, you could be eating it, you could be baking with it. Water, you can be bathing with it, you can be asperging with it. Fire, you can be burning it as incense, or a bundle, and then air comes into the incense energy as well. And all of these things can really bring up a quite strong memory within us, because we're all aware, or most of us are aware, of what rosemary smells like, what rosemary tastes like, and how it makes us feel, how it shifts our energy, how it drops our little stick so we make a load of noise on camera. So it kind of really has this incredible memory of not only this use throughout history, this use throughout spiritual connections. You know, it's one of these cross-cultural, cross-time type herbs. And it continues to be added to, it's still in use, it's still quite often one of the first herbs people start to learn about, because it is so useful and so available and so easy to grow as well. I like the idea that the rosemary essential oil in particular, but rosemary anyway, reminds us that we have a conscious mind, a subconscious mind and a superconscious mind, and that we are all spiritual beings. And it kind of links together the different elements of the psyche through different sensation. You know, memory and the evoking of memory through scent is something which is well documented. It's one of the human quirks of the human condition, that scent can trigger memory more easily and more readily than anything else. And I love how it's the energy of the essential oil talks about the fact that, you know, we are this many levels of being, and that many levels of being can be recognised through the lens of one thing. And just because it is one thing doesn't mean it can't touch every part of who we are. It can touch us on a mundane, everyday level, cooking, baking. It can touch us on a spiritual level. It can, you know, be part of our ritual bathing, our cleansing, our purification. It can be part of something even higher and even perhaps older in sort of past life memory recall style energies. It's funny how one of the most readily available and probably most frequently used herbs is actually overlooked. For me, I was hesitant and resistant to rosemary for a while, because it's, on the surface of it, it seems so ordinary. And that's my own failing in that, because once the minute you start to really think about it and really look beneath the surface, you start to realise that there is this incredible spiral of energy throughout time, throughout history, connected to herbs such as rosemary. I think the last point that I think I wanted to cover is there's this energy of love attached to rosemary. And for me, I think it's because it connects us all as human beings. It takes us where we're supposed to be on our journey. It helps us to become who we want to be, and it helps us to connect and make those unions that we are supposed to. perhaps love is the greatest healer that we have as human beings, and love and healing walk hand in hand. And perhaps because Rosemary crosses the boundaries of all these different unions, it can bring together energies so vast together in one overwhelmingly simple and yet overwhelmingly complex energy. And given the state of things this morning, given the state of the country, I think this is why I've been called to really pay more attention to Rosemary this morning, because this is the energy that I most sorely need for healing work and all the rest of it. And to lift exhaustion and awaken my heart and bring me back to myself. So that's going to be it for this video. Many blessings.